Mr. Speaker, today I rise with a heavy heart to amplify the voices of Edmonton Strathcona constituents, the Lebanese Canadian community, and in fact Canadians from across the country who are devastated by the escalating violence in the Middle East. Canadians believe in justice, Mr. Speaker, and fairness in a world where innocent lives, all innocent lives, are protected. We have a history of being peacekeepers, of convening others, of diplomatic efforts that not only kept peace, but built peace. But now, today, for months, people have been telling me that that is not what they see from their government. A Canadian citizen of Lebanese heritage told me just this afternoon that she feels like she doesn't belong, like this government has turned its back on her and her human rights. Another individual told me that it's the double standard that is so horrifying to him. He asked me how this government can feel such empathy for Ukraine, and he was very clear. They should feel that empathy for Ukraine and for what is happening in Ukraine, but why there is so little empathy for those who are from Palestine or from Lebanon. Mr. Speaker, this breaks my heart. The citizens of this country feel that the government does not see their humanity, and this goes against everything we believe in as Canadians. Tonight we are going to speak about the crisis in Lebanon. We must. And we must also speak of what happened today just hours ago. Iran launched missiles at Israel, further escalating this global crisis and threatening Israeli civilians. The NDP, every member of this House must unequivocally condemn this horrific escalation by Iran. And I want to be very crystal clear. Civilians in Israel, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in the wider region are paying the price for the failures of world leaders. The world is on the brink of further violence because we have not been holding political leaders to the standards of international law, because we have collectively tolerated the erosion of rule-based international order, because we have not done enough to de-escalate, because we have not countered the warmongers and the hate that is too prevalent amongst the powerful. There is no military solution to this crisis. War crimes must not beget war crimes. If we continue down this path, there is nothing but death. For 1 year, we have witnessed the horrifying violence of Netanyahu's genocide in Gaza, which followed the terrible Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th. For 1 year, our party has appealed to the Canadian government to do the hard work to secure a ceasefire, to implement a real arms embargo, to get Palestinians to safety, to return the hostages, to de-escalate, to save the lives of so many, including children and vulnerable people, especially Palestinians in Gaza who are bearing the cost of political inaction and the betrayal of international law. And now we are here to discuss a new escalation of violence. The violence of aggression that may cost even more lives, including the lives of Canadians. All of us in this House have constituents who have loved ones in the Middle East. The Lebanese community in Canada includes hundreds of thousands of people. Around 45,000 Canadians currently live in Lebanon, and we already know that 2 have lost their lives. And while Canada has offered limited consular services in the form of seats on commercial flights, we know that many people cannot reach the airports due to airstrikes. There is no power, there is no internet, there is chaos, and Lebanese Canadians have told me that they do not know where to turn. Over the past several days, 1,000 people have been killed in Lebanon, 6,000 wounded, and 1 million people have been displaced from their homes as a result of Israeli airstrikes. Israel is bombing densely populated cities, and Hezbollah, a listed terrorist organization under Canadian law, launches more rockets towards Israel. Tonight, Iran launched ballistic missiles at Israel, another frightening development that threatens Israeli civilians who, like everyone else, deserve peace, deserve to live in security. And we know that this could lead to a wider war. Retaliation after retaliation after retaliation. The escalation is terrifying. We are on the brink, and it is our duty as parliamentarians and as Canadians to not just call for a ceasefire, but to use every tool possible to bring about peace. Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear. Hezbollah is a listed terrorist organization under Canada law, and has committed very serious crimes over the decades. Hezbollah and its leaders should be brought to justice, just as the Iranian regime, a sponsor of Hezbollah and Hamas, should be brought to justice. New Democrats have worked hard to ensure that Canada listed the IRGC as a terrorist organization. We worked hard to bring a motion to this House calling on the Tumaj sanctions against Iranian leaders. But, Mr. Speaker, Iranian people are not the Iranian regime. The people of Lebanon are not Hezbollah. The people of Palestine are not Hamas. And the people of Israel are not Netanyahu. International law clearly states that civilians are never a target, not in Palestine, not in Lebanon, not in Israel, not in Iran. International law states clearly that wars have limits. The fundamental rule of international humanitarian law in conflict is that all parties must distinguish at all times between combatants and civilians. What we have seen over the past year with Israel's genocide in Gaza is that the Netanyahu government is ignoring its obligations under international law. There is no consideration for civilians. Giving people 30 minutes warning that you are going to bomb their home when they have nowhere else to go does not absolve you of your responsibilities. It's not how international law works. Civilian protection is absolute. And to suggest that these civilians don't matter or that they are collateral damage, whether they are Palestinian or Lebanese, is racism. It's deplorable, it's dehumanization, and it's intolerable. The people of Lebanon are terrified that Lebanon will be the next Gaza. The people of Lebanon are still dealing with the worst economic crisis they've ever seen. They have not recovered from the explosion in the port of Beirut. Their hospitals are short of medicine. The people of Lebanon do not want war. Children will bear the brunt of this war, just as children in Gaza have borne the brunt of the genocide. Just yesterday, Oxfam reported that more women and children were killed in Gaza by the Israeli military than in any other recent conflict in a single year. Thousands have fled for safety. Children are traumatized and homes are destroyed. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to the many humanitarians and medics and helpers who are doing everything they can to save lives and help the 1 million displaced. But this is a political problem, and it will require a political solution. And tonight, as we stand here, afraid for what comes next, thinking of the traumatized children in Israel hiding in bomb shelters tonight, knowing that the displaced children in Lebanon and Gaza don't have bomb shelters and are equally traumatized. As we stand here in relative safety in Canada, we have a duty to act. The UN has called on Israel to end this ground incursion, which is a violation of UN resolutions and a violation of Lebanon's sovereignty. Israel has ignored an international request for a 21-day ceasefire, which Canada and many other states has asked for. Earlier today, United Nations Special Coordinator for Lebanon said, and I quote, "What we feared has materialized. With strikes throughout Lebanon, including in the heart of Beirut, and incursions across the Blue Line, violence is spiraling to dangerous heights. Every rocket and missile fired, every bomb dropped, and every ground raid conducted pull the parties further from the vision set out in Security Council Resolution 1701 in 2006. This cycle of violence will not end well for anyone. A sliver of opportunity remains for diplomacy to succeed. The question now is whether it will be seized or squandered." End quote. But Canada needs to act now. Canada needs to call on Israel to stop. There must be an arms embargo, including closing loopholes that allow weapons to go through the U.S. We must put sanctions on Netanyahu's extremist government. It is clear that over the past year, none of the actions have made Israelis safer. We have spoken to many Israelis who are marching in the streets opposing the government's violence, calling for a hostage deal and a ceasefire. And Arab leaders like the Jordanian foreign minister have stated clearly that Netanyahu is not a partner for peace. There are partners for peace in Israel, people who reject the dehumanization of others, people who yearn for peace and justice for all, but Netanyahu is not one of them. New Democrats stand in solidarity with the innocent people of Lebanon, Palestine, and Israel. Canada must do better.